made a nosedive into the sun before it hit a number of weeks ago, it caused a pretty significant CME. And of course, NASA is like, oh, just coincidence. For the 180th time, just coincidence that a comet could affect the sun. And you know, they can't even, it's becoming so obvious that they're wrong, they can't even post their websites to try and put out misinformation, because at a certain point they're going to start to look silly. So what does all of this mean? Well, it means that all of my predictions regarding Comet Ison so far have come true, come remarkably true. By the way, there have not been any updates on any NASA websites for months. In many cases, a long time ago, that any updates have been posted. Now let's go to the November time frame. As Comet Ison moves into the solar system, it will be visible up in the early morning sky. But remember, Comet Ison is still a small comet. It's not a big raging comet by any stretch of the imagination. There are some people that are predicting that it will fizzle out. And if the nucleus broke up, we might at worst have a number of small comets streaming in towards the sun. But I think it's well developed enough now that it's not simply going to go away. The next stop is the November time frame, so we have to go through the month of October with Comet Ison traversing the solar system, and then around the 10th of November, that's the time, in fact even a little earlier, maybe even a week earlier, start looking at Ison for developing a sunward spike or extensive sunward spike, and then also connecting to the planet Mercury. The planet Mercury moves very quickly, so it's going to be around the 10th, the 9th to the 10th, visible up in the morning sky, and then at that point it'll be swinging around, and Comet Ison on the 14th, between the 13th and the 14th of November, that morning is when Comet Ison will be right in the back door of planet Mercury. Perfect electrical alignment. It'll be very near the ecliptic, and that's when the little planet Mercury, if Mars went comet now, which it did, just a little bit, planet Mercury might turn into Comet Mercury, enough to where it would be extremely visible. And remember that that's when the NERC planned power outage is supposed to be. It's supposed to be on that date, the 13th and the 14th. So will they shut down the power? Will they do whatever it takes to keep the public from looking at this? But remember, people all over the world, especially in the poorer countries, are going to have, someone somewhere is going to have visibility of this. And a lot of people who live out that are poor people, oddly enough, have a much better understanding of the night sky, of the planets, etc. And this has been historically correct, that they have had a good understanding of the night sky, knew which objects were the planets. This is unlike people who live in the city today. They go out in the country and they go, well, look at all the stars, and they have no idea which ones, the bright ones, are planets or which ones are just bright stars. They have no clue. And this is not true even in underdeveloped countries. Some people have a good understanding of the stars. But at any rate, that November 10th to 14th time frame, very important, and that's when we could start to see some very impulsive activity on the sun. And now look at Mars, Comet Ison. Here we are in late September. The comet affecting the sun, sending out a serious solar flare that causes significant auroras on Earth. Nothing earth-shattering, not something that would take down the power grid. But imagine what could start popping around the November 10th to 14th time frame, and then continue as Comet Ison moves in for its dive in around the sun. And I think that's slated towards the end of November. Then Comet Ison would swing around the sun, hopefully maintain its integrity. And that's when it comes out the other side, that's of the sun, when it comes out the other side of the sun, that's when we should be able to see a very good view of just the nucleus of Comet Ison. And remember that when Comet Lovejoy came around and we saw what you would call just the bare nucleus, no tail at all, before it redeveloped a tail, we could see the nucleus in the morning sky bigger than the planet Mercury. And of course NASA says, a wispy 600 feet across. No, not at all, not by any stretch of the imagination. And then it develops into the biggest comet in history, literally, in terms of the visibility in the sky, etc. So Comet Ison could turn out to be quite the comet. Will it disintegrate? There's a possibility. There's always a possibility that a comet will fizzle. But I'm starting to doubt this, and I'm starting to believe that they're going to do anything possible to dissuade people from looking at this comet. They are very worried about this comet. It just has too many things, too many visible things that the public can learn from and understand that these are not dirty snowballs. What are the main effects of learning that? The public would learn that that historically these objects could have affected Earth, and that implies that they could affect us in the future. And also that the world leaders don't have any...
He's cutting off.
Other side of the sun. That's when we should be able to see a very good view of just the nucleus of Comet Ison. And remember that when Comet Lovejoy came around and we saw what you would call just the bare nucleus, no tail at all, before it redeveloped a tail, we could see the nucleus in the morning sky bigger than the planet Mercury. And of course NASA says, a wispy 600 feet across. No, not at all, not by any stretch of the imagination. And then it develops into the biggest comet in history, literally, in terms of the visibility in the sky, etc. So Comet Ison could turn out to be quite the comet. Will it disintegrate? There's a possibility. There's always a possibility that a comet will fizzle. But I'm starting to doubt this, and I'm starting to believe that they're going to do anything possible to dissuade people from looking at this comet. They are very worried about this comet. It just has too many things, too many visible things that the public can learn from and understand that these are not dirty snowballs. What are the main effects of learning that? The public would learn that that historically these objects could have affected Earth, and that implies that they could affect us in the future. And also that the world leaders don't have any control over those objects out there. That they're not... I bet you there's some big contractors, military aerospace contractors, who still have their operations running. That their funding is still there just because they have a lot of pull and all of that feedback loop of money, that they're still operational. So what I'm seeing is a very selective shutdown of the federal government, and then what I anticipate is a even more selective rejuvenation of the federal government. Once it's brought back online, it's going to be brought back in little pieces, all for the savings of money, which is just funny money anyway. It's just all printed or created in a computer. So at any rate, these are very interesting times, and at the heart of it are comets. This is what I find very strange indeed. And so a lot of people, when I was early in my days of criticizing NASA, people would say, how could you criticize NASA? Everything they do is, they're 100% right, their accuracy is, how could you possibly criticize NASA? Now everybody's figuring it out. What was I talking about those decades ago? Back in the early 90s when I was pounding on this and everybody looked at me like I was out of my mind. Now you're starting to see. I knew this back then. I knew it a lot earlier than then. I knew it back in the 1970s when I was at Cornell University. I knew that this was all a big pack of fairy tale mumbo jumbo, but it's now the people are waking up en masse. How important science is to maintaining world control, and how important it is to pawn off second-degree garbage science onto the public. Okay, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit here. Many people then want to know what should they do. Then the answer is the same. You better start taking care of yourself. We have had a hard time keeping up with inventory just because of the ordering that's going on. And like a lot of people, I don't want to be too far advanced in stocking up a lot of inventory, because none of us know the day that things will shut down, where there simply won't be any mail or delivery service, or things like UPS will shut down. I mean, we don't know, so I have to keep things somewhat moderate, and I'm not a giant business by any stretch of the imagination. By the end of the day, things are pretty tight. Anybody who's a talk show host will tell you that. Things are not glowingly, ravingly, amazingly wonderful these days. It's very tight out there. And so, but what would I suggest people do? Get yourself the water filtration system that you need, water storage system, and pre-filters are very important in case of emergency. If you're not in control of your source of water, you may have sludge for water. It might be very impure water. And so pre-filtering it is a good idea. The pre-filter and the modular storage filtration system are unique to my website. And I've got the plastic water filters. If you need a second water filter for, say, the cabin or another place where you might end up where there's no water filter, that's an inexpensive way of getting a water filtration system. Then there's the